Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, guys. I'm your gracious host, Diva Divine Light. And I wanted to give you the audio for an article that I found, and it talks about, how the industry is going to feel, about R. Kelly and, now that he's been found guilty, what's the industry going to be like now? Now that he's gone, um, now that he's been convicted, we don't know if he's going to get the appeal and things of this nature. So we will definitely get to that. And once again, hello, 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 everyone. This is a pre recorded live. Yes, I'm doing this in the middle of the night, so I can just drop it when I can drop it. Keep giving you guys information. I'm the information girl. So just remember. And so I wanted to also play Faith Rogers came out with Gloria Allred and did a press conference, and they spoke about how they felt that R. Kelly was convicted. So let's sit back, pop a little popcorn, eat, drink, whatever it is you choose. Don't forget to hit that like button. All right. Before you do that, jump out, hit the like button, come back into the chat. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so. Hit that subscribe and then hit the little notification bell on the side. You hit it again, you press the option all, and you will get all my videos. Because if you only hit the notification bell once, you're going to get personalized things. And that's just like uploads and every so often things of that nature. But if you put it on all, you'll get everything. Uploads, lives, shorts. You'll get to see everything. All right, guys? All right. So let's listen to Gloria Allred with Faith Rogers. Okay? Here we go.
Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and with me is Faith Rogers, standing behind her in support of their daughter, Faith's mother and father, Mr. and Ms. Rogers. I'll be making a statement, Faith will be making a statement, and then we'll both be happy to take any questions. Today I'm here with my client, Faith Rogers, to respond to statements by Bill Cosby's publicist, Andrew Wyatt, that R. Kelly, who was recently convicted in New York of serious federal crimes, such as racketeering and multiple violations of the Mann Act, was, quote, railroaded, end quote, meaning that Mr. Kelly did not receive a fair trial. I represent 3 of the 5 victims for whom charges were filed and who testified under oath in the criminal case. In addition, I represent 2 other witnesses who also testified in the prosecution's case. There was a 6th victim who was deceased. That is Aaliyah. Faith Rogers was one of the 5 victims of R. Kelly who testified for the prosecution. Her testimony was very powerful and important in convicting R. Kelly. In addition to Faith, more than 40 witnesses testified under oath for the prosecution, and a mountain of incriminating and corroborating evidence was presented to the jury, including, but not limited to, texts, emails, videos, cell phone records, and flight and business records. Based on the evidence admitted at trial, the jury, after 9 hours of deliberation, decided that R. Kelly was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that he would be convicted. R. Kelly was not, quote, railroaded, end quote. He was convicted based on the evidence. Mr. Wyatt claimed that R. Kelly's case was an example of, quote, an assault on black men, end quote. He said, quote, "This is an assault on successful Black men who are doing great things," end quote. Nothing could be farther from the truth. R. Kelly did not do great things when it came to many women and underage girls. Instead, he recruited them using his fame and fortune, isolated them, sexually abused them, indoctrinated them, intimidated them, controlled them, humiliated them, shamed them, punished them, coerced many of them to appear in child pornography videos which he directed and produced, and then threatened them that if they ever revealed what he had done to them, he would release the embarrassing videos and photos which he had taken. In addition to all of that, he failed to disclose to many of his victims that he had genital herpes, and he knowingly transmitted it to them, causing them to suffer from it for the rest of their lives. The jury heard all of this and more, and rightfully convicted R. Kelly. Mr. Kelly had 4 lawyers representing him in his defense in that courtroom every day. But even his small army of lawyers and all of the due process afforded him by the judge could not protect him from the overwhelming evidence admitted against him. Throughout all of this, Faith Rogers has refused to be intimidated or deterred from testifying against Mr. Kelly. She was determined to tell her truth, despite the lies and attacks upon her. Throughout her long ordeal, including an intense cross-examination by the defense, she has conducted herself with grace, dignity, and courage. After Mr. Kelly's conviction, she remained silent, but today she has decided to speak out. Faith Rogers will not be silenced because the truth matters. The injustice and harm inflicted on young Black women matters. And what happened to Faith Rogers, a victim of R. Kelly, matters. Fighting against the celebrity and his fame and power takes courage and persistence, and the support of family and others who believe them. Faith Rogers and other victims have demonstrated that when they become empowered and supported, they can win justice and inspire others. Faith Rogers will continue to speak her truth, and that is what she is here to do today. And now I present Faith Rogers.
As a 19-year-old young woman, I started this journey, the journey of telling my truth. There was no real preparation for the harassment, the loss of friends, the days of hating what I saw in the mirror because of online comments, the feeling of loneliness that slept with me every night through it all. But the people I've had physically around me in this journey that felt like a one-woman battle reminded me that the sacrifice I made was not in vain. I hope any young woman following my story was inspired, but especially my young Black peers. To them I say, please do not be afraid to free yourself and speak your truth. In this journey while fighting for myself, I stood against many opinions and lies from those in my own community, but I kept going. Your inner strength will take you to your healing. It was disheartening to see, even years and a second trial later, that the abuser, my abuser, and the abuser of many women is being held up as a victim and even considered to be railroaded. The women who were victims of R. Kelly had many nights of being reminded of their own trauma, which resulted from being abused by him. I hope the conviction makes it a little easier to think about those times. And when you have those nights of anxiety, worry, or just feeling left out because you made the choice to stop your abuse, know that it was not in vain. I pray that instead of pointing the finger, we can learn to take care and truly protect our Black women. I heard Andrew Wyatt, a spokesperson for Bill Cosby, say R. Kelly was railroaded. To me, that term is beyond insulting. After meeting R. Kelly at 19 years old, for that year and a half, he manipulated me for his own enjoyment and sexually abused me and tried to control me. When I made the choice to come forward with my story, he threatened me on multiple occasions that if I continued to go forward with the telling of my truth, he were publishing pictures and videos of me. Despite the threats, I continued to tell what happened to me, and as a result, R. Kelly retaliated against me and published those photos. Even though he did this, I refused to back down, and I still testified at trial. R. Kelly did receive a fair trial, and he was convicted based on the evidence. He was not railroaded. Thank you to my parents. Thank you to Gloria Allred. Thank you to Lee Mary. And thank you to all survivors of abuse who have shared their story with me, gave me support, and still to this day help me. The greatest gift was not his conviction, but knowing I helped someone else in my shoes. Thank you.
I also want to point out that Mr. Wyatt, I guess approximately day after he made the statement, which many people attributed to Bill Cosby, since Mr. Wyatt is generally only known as Mr. Cosby's spokesperson, then said, well, that was his own opinion, to exercise his First Amendment rights. I suppose that was after Mr. Cosby received a great deal of that in reference to that statement. And so we'll be happy to take any questions, whether it's by Zoom or anyone who is present. If it's by Zoom, feel free to type in your question and it will be relayed. Are there any questions? Nancy?
Hi, Nancy Dillon, you've spoken in the past about how when you were faced with this threatening letter, using photos, how it caused you such great stress. Can you just talk about that? I think was a very
The question was, I'll just repeat the question that you answered, that you had spoken in the past about when you received, and actually, I think it was your attorney representing you in a civil lawsuit, received and put into you a threatening letter, which appeared to be signed by R. Kelly, in threatening to release the naked photos of you. And so your question was,
well, this was a big deal in the trial. Had a prosecutor saying that one of the reasons that this went on for so long was conspiracy reasons. There was a lot of intimidation in play. You experienced that, I believe, with that letter, and I want you to, I think you're a good example of how that affected.
how did you feel about it? Is that the question? And kept you at the trial, said it.
I think you mentioned like the provide procedures. Is that right?
So actually, So, there's a lot of moments that helped me, but that moment of when my pictures got leaked on the internet, I actually was at home. So that moment for me, I don't think anybody, just any young woman, especially trying to just figure it out, want their whole body parts exposed. Like I woke up to texts and friends from my family, like, you guys see this, like, so it was one of those moments. It was hard, and it's one of those things that when things are on the internet, it's there for people to see. So that's something that will forever follow me. A lot of people saw my body parts and they don't even know me, so that definitely wasn't a good feeling. And it was one of those reminders that, like, he really didn't want me to talk, but even through all that, like, it just gave me more drive to keep going, because once all my cards are on the table, there's nothing you can really do to me at that point. I've gone through all the embarrassment, everything that's been said about me. There's nothing more you can do to me at that point than what's already been done. So the stress of it all, of course, it caused me anxiety, all types of medical problems. I'm in a much better space now, but through it, in that moment, I didn't know if I was going to make it through or how I was going to redeem myself from all this. It's already hard going up against, people's favorite. So it was a humbling experience, and
Can you just describe your feeling when that verdict came in, when he was convicted?
Okay. The question is, can she describe her feelings when the verdict came in of guilty? Guilty. All right.
When I got the call from my mom, I woke up. It was a regular day for me, and I said to myself, "Oh, I forgot." And I said, okay, I'm gonna just wait. And it wasn't within like 30 minutes of me like reminding myself that something big was happening. I got the call from my mom, and then after that, it was just a train of congratulations. But deep on the inside, it didn't feel like congratulations. Like a phone call, that one call or that one text, it doesn't make everything you went through worth it. But I can definitely say like it kind of was. It felt good to have the evidence stamp everything I've been saying. And I no longer have to explain myself as facts are facts. So there's no black and white when it comes to that situation. So that definitely was weight off my chest.
We have some questions from Zoom.
Yes,
First one is, can we confirm base stage, please?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. But the question is from Zoom and
Yes,
it's what?
can we confirm base stage, please?
My age of now, I'm 24 years old.
Second question, how did you deal with questions from defense attorneys on cross-examination about why you stayed with Kelly or continued to visit him despite your negative experiences? What do you think of the victim blaming from defense attorneys?
So the question from Zoom is, what did you think of the defense's questioning about why you stayed with Mr. Kelly? And how do you feel about the victim sheet?
Yes.
When they questioned me about that, it wasn't really anything that shook me up too bad because we do things when we're younger. We have experiences that that person that I was involved with at 19 now is 24. I wouldn't be involved with them. So it really didn't bother me when they were asking me why. That's everyone's question why. But I've also learned that number one question of why a lot of people don't speak. And at that age, you're taking opinions from everybody around you. And there was nobody around me I really talked to tell me no. Or so if I'm going based off of what he thinks of me and what I think of myself, at that time, I wasn't the same person. So cross-examination, it was what it was. They definitely tried to tear me down, but I feel like I literally sat in this for 3 years before surviving R. Kelly, before any of that. So I've had my time to deal with opinions and people questioning me. So the security I have on myself to know that I'm not the same person, and I made a mistake, but I chose to stop, and I didn't choose to just he's gonna do me wrong, and I just let it go. I pressed forward, so the next person who comes across me, even just be aware. To me, there was no clear warning. Everything around me was kind of acceptable. So there comes a point when you have to hold yourself accountable and your abuser, and I did that. Not only did I hold myself accountable, but
I would also add to that the question of why a victim stays is a frequent question, and has been testified to by experts in sexual assault and rape in numerous high-profile trials, including this one, including the one involving Harvey Weinstein, and including in the trial of Bill Cosby, that it's a sexual assault rape myth that if someone stays in an abusive relationship, that it must not have been abusive. And that's a myth. It's false. And it's false as to survivors of domestic violence as well, many of whom stay. So I just think that the real question is not why they stay, but why the predators do what they do to abuse women. I'd be happy to take another question.
Question from Zoom.
Next question is from Zoom.
Faith, what does healing look like for you moving forward?
Would you say the question again, please?
Faith, what does healing look like for you moving forward?
Faith, what does healing look like for you moving forward?
Yes.
moving forward, healing for me looks like I think closing this chapter in my life and figuring out what I want to do, who I want to be. I've had a lot of obstacles ahead of me in trying to just exist as an individual in my 20s. I didn't think I was the first 4 years of my 20s like this, but now that it's here, I'm trying to have different things that I love. I discovered I love to write. That's what I'm good at. So hopefully, you'll see me years later successful with this spark behind me. Healing is definitely not, there's no guide on how to heal. It's a lot of up and days. A lot of up and down days, a lot of meltdowns. So if I could say, oh, I know exactly what my healing looks like, I'd be lying. I don't.
And I was asking you about the art.
Brave girl. All these women that went through this were brave girls. All of them were brave to come out and tell their story. So now, R. Kelly's been found guilty, but what's the verdict for the music industry?
R. Kelly's been found guilty, but what's the verdict for the music industry? October 8, 2021, comments off. R. Kelly's conviction on 9 counts of racketeering and sex trafficking last Monday, September 28, is a long overdue step towards justice for those who've spent a decade or longer calling out the prolific artist and producer as a serial sexual predator. But the guilty verdict for the once chart-dominating singer, he's still pending trials for federal and state charges in Illinois and Minnesota, also included an unspoken co-defendant, one that the public is now turning to with questions: the music industry. Kelly's patterns of sexual assault and abuse of minors and young women have been a consistent theme for nearly the entirety of his career, so much so that his name became synonymous with grown men pursuing teenage girls. 12 Play, the singer's 1993 solo debut, was only a year old when the marriage certificate for then 27-year-old Kelly's secret nuptials to then 15-year-old Aaliyah, the artist whose career he helped launch, was made public. In 2002, the bootleg video of a 30-something Kelly allegedly having sex with a 14-year-old girl could be found at barbershops, hair salons, and street vendors in every major city even before Kelly was arrested. His sexual proclivities became fodder for stand-up comedy and Chappelle Show skits. So did the public's refusal to acknowledge his behavior. The Boondocks spoofed the supporters standing sentry outside of the Brooklyn courthouse 16 years before it actually happened. In between that 2002 arrest and 2008 trial and acquittal for child pornography, the singer dubbed himself the Pied Piper of R&B, even as new reports surfaced of multiple settlements with the families of other minors. In 2017, Jim DeRogatis' BuzzFeed expose revealing allegations that Kelly had 6 girls and women living under his complete and total control tipped the first domino leading to the #MuteRKelly movement, 2019's explosive docuseries Surviving R. Kelly, his eventual charges, and the September 28 verdict. In the years prior, however, the universe that made Kelly's stardom possible, including his team and label, journalists, collaborators, programmers, promoters, and millions of consumers, largely refrained from any critical or condemning commentary about the artist, his allegations, or his charges. And the few that did, including Kelly protege Sparkle, whose niece was the underage teen in the infamous 2002 video, were usually ignored, harassed, or silenced. The history of R. Kelly's allegations and belated fall from grace highlights the industry's current crisis of culture. It has historically been a space where social norms are flaunted, disregarded, or even subverted, especially with sex and drugs. The bigger the talent, artist or executive, the wider the allowances for behavior no normal person could get away with. As such, record labels and publishers have rarely directly addressed the personal lives of their artists in a critical way. There is currently no standard morals clause in recording contracts, and because the artist is not only the product but a brand and business unto themselves, public sentiment usually only impacts their label home so far as it affects sales, streams, and airplay. If an artist's viability drops, the label makes a business decision, not a values call. But the separate the art from the artist ethos is quickly becoming bad form. The #MeToo movement spurred watershed moments in every area from politics to Hollywood, except the music industry, which has remained relatively unchanged and unreformed. There have been some high-profile executive oustings, namely Republic Records' Charlie Wack, and a handful of artists have been called to account for accusations of behavior ranging from creepy and inappropriate, Moby, to harassment and abuse, Ryan Adams. But these combos fade from public discourse relatively quickly, and in black music specifically, there's still a strong resistance to speaking out against or abandoning established figures, regardless of the accusations. For example, Def Jam founder and mogul Russell Simmons stepped down from his company and moved to Bali following 2017 allegations of sexual harassment, assault, and rape from a total of 20 women. Though allegations were widely covered by news and entertainment outlets, and even eventually chronicled in the 2020 HBO Max documentary On the Record, there have been no public statements of note against Simmons from current music executives or former partners. Simmons, who has denied all allegations, has still been warmly welcomed in cultural spaces without challenge or attack, including calling into Method Man and Redman's April vs. Battle to wish his two former artists well, and sending a pre-taped video message for rapper DMX's funeral, which veered uncomfortably into admissions of his own drug use and former headspace. The reticence is partially out of a loyalty to community, but the pervasive pattern of dismissing the voices and value of black women and girls can't be overlooked. Chance the Rapper admitted in an interview aired as part of Surviving R. Kelly that he possibly didn't give weight to the allegations against the fellow Chicago native, which were even more prevalent locally, because I didn't value the accuser's stories because they were black women. There are R. Kellys in our neighborhoods, in our communities, Tarana Burke, founder of the #MeToo movement, explained to Trevor Noah in 2020. We cannot get people to pay attention to the plight of sexual violence against black and brown girls. And R. Kelly is a perfect example of it. On a broader scale relative to R. Kelly's case, the history of American popular music's relationship to teenage girls is a gross and murky one altogether. They were the centerpiece of rock and R&B songs, the romantic interest in videos, and the default profile for music groupies. Teenage girls were sexualized in music and pop culture well into the early 2000s, and for much of that time there was an eyebrow raise at most for adult men who publicly pursued girls in or just barely out of their teens. Adult recording stars have been exploiting their underage fans since the days of Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley. For decades, society normalized that dynamic, former label executive and writer Drew Dixon tells Billboard. Dixon is one of the women who publicly said Simmons raped her, and a vocal activist for change and accountability in the music business. The assumption that a popular recording star with countless attractive women to choose from wouldn't need to exploit women, and therefore can't possibly be an abuser, set the stage for the sexual exploitation of minors in and around the music industry to happen in plain sight. Kelly's preference for younger girls was never really in question, nor was it something he necessarily tried to hide. When MTV's Touré once asked 40-year-old Kelly on air if he liked teenage girls, Kelly famously responded by asking, "When you say teenage, how old are we talking?" But the extent to which his behavior was predatory, as opposed to consensual, was the point of debate for those who wanted to defend him. However, the public discourse and social barometers around consent have evolved swiftly over just the last decade. What was once considered creepy is now rightfully called grooming or assault. As society comes to terms with the inability of a child to consent to sex with an adult, predatory behavior emerges in a new and troubling light, Dixon adds. The sexual exploitation of young women and girls that was perpetrated over decades by R. Kelly is an extreme and particularly odious example of a dynamic that is as old as the derisive concept of the music industry groupie itself. His position as one of the most formative artists and producers of modern R&B also served as a significant deterrent to accountability for Kelly. At his height, Kelly boasted multi-platinum albums an average of every 2 years, even following his 2002 arrest. When Daragada's Story dropped in 2017, Kelly was already on a commercial decline. His last studio album in 2015 was the lowest selling of his career, and his last single to chart on the Hot 100 was in 2013. Still, it was only after in-person protests and immense public pressure following Surviving R. Kelly that RCA parted ways with their career artist in January 2019. They did so with no official statement and only anonymous confirmations to press, while simply removing him from the label's website. Sony was equally discreet about the company's break with producer Dr. Luke in 2017, following his protracted legal battle with Kesha over allegations including sexual assault and harassment. after Kelly was dropped by RCA. It was revealed that his publisher, Universal, had quietly severed their relationship months prior. It's hard not to speculate whether the turn in public and professional sentiment would have happened with a still multi-platinum selling act. The elaborate scaffolding of the music industry, combined with society's contempt for black women and girls, allowed R. Kelly's abuse to go on for decades, Dixon insists. Major stars in the record business spawn their own mini-economies, where they are surrounded by a web of resources and yes-men. If the star at the center of that mini-economy happens to be a sexual predator, the resources of that ecosystem can be used to ensnare victims and to shield the star from accountability. It's impossible to examine the 25-year documented timeline of R. Kelly's accusations next to his career timeline over the same period and not consider it an indictment against every facet of the business that allowed his career to thrive. DeRogatis, after more than 20 years of reporting on Kelly as arguably the closest journalist to these stories, was clear on the culpability of the players around the artist. By refusing to derail the gravy train, executives, managers and promoters allowed this man to continue, because it was money, he emphasized to NPR in 2019. It was money that allowed him to prey on these girls. If he is brought to justice now, it is only going to be because he's broke. Perhaps of even more consequence than enabling his continued financial success, the years of support emboldened Kelly. Both his victims and people who've worked with or around him have reported that he doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. In 2018, Kelly released a 19-minute-long musical diatribe called I Admit, a rambling, lyrical confession of being imperfect, sleeping with a lot of women, being illiterate, and signing away his publishing. It's also a self-righteous rebuke of allegations of misconduct worthy of jail or public scorn. Am I supposed to go to jail or lose my career because of your opinion, one that assumes a position of persecution, turn the world against me, but only God can mute me, and eschews any sense of regret, remorse or responsibility? Don't push your daughter in my face, and tell me that it's okay / cause your agenda is to get paid, and get mad when it don't go your way. Individuals and organizations have been working since 2017 to amend their roles in maintaining R. Kelly's extended grace. Many of the artists he wrote and produced for or collaborated with have either publicly said they're removing the songs from their live sets, like R&B artist Joe, or have pulled the tracks from streaming services, like Lady Gaga and Jennifer Hudson. Conversations about how those services themselves should handle Kelly's catalog are less simple and will take longer to navigate. The founders of the #MuteRKelly movement called for streaming services to pull Kelly's music after he was dropped from RCA, in order to dry up the revenue stream that allowed Kelly to avoid consequence for so many years. However, Kelly currently owes several $1 million in judgments, so that's money that would satisfy suits won by both creditors and victims. In 2018, Spotify, who already had a hate speech policy, announced a hateful conduct policy saying when an artist or creator does something that is especially harmful or hateful, for example, violence against children and sexual violence, it may affect the ways we work with or support that artist or creator. But the company pulled the official policy relatively quickly, partly under industry pressure, realizing it was too difficult to assign clear-cut parameters on which artists would fall under this policy, and enforcing it without veering into censorship. Spotify has, however, continued to exclude R. Kelly music from its promoted playlists. But again, Kelly is a symptom, not the problem. Sadly, there's no shortage of artists in music history who are both praised as legends and were abusers. R. Kelly's case was just the most high-profile and severe, more so even than Michael Jackson, whose decade-plus of child molestation and abuse allegations and 2005 trial were global news, but ended with his acquittal, and weren't accompanied with the same level of public corroboration and confirmation of allegations. Or, for that matter, with an extensive amount of music directly related to his charges, as with Kelly. However, now is a moment of reckoning for the industry, an opportunity to shift the pervasive rule of see something, say nothing, and the practice of separating art from artist to a dangerous fault. The pressing question is not just what to do about R. Kelly's musical legacy, but how to change the environment that allowed him to operate with impunity for so long. But is the music industry ready to examine its ethical responsibility where artists are concerned? Unfortunately, probably not. I don't foresee a change in how the industry handles artist allegations happening, shares Jeffrey Sledge, a former Jive Records executive. Unless the artist's actions are so out of hand like Robert's that you can't avoid it. And if the artist is still selling and profitable, they will avoid it. There are, currently, active recording artists with publicly known patterns of repeat domestic violence and/or sexual assault, convicted or alleged, who still enjoy the support of fans, platforms, collaborators and labels. Chris Brown, whose single Go Crazy peaked at number 3 on the Hot 100 this March, has faced a string of accusations and charges of violence against women in the decade plus since he pled guilty to felony assault against then-girlfriend Rihanna. This includes a current restraining order from ex-girlfriend Karrueche Tran, granted in 2017 for 5 years due to what she said were repeated violent threats. Marilyn Manson, currently facing multiple lawsuits and additional allegations of sexual assault, battery, and abuse from women including former fiancée Evan Rachel Wood, is one of the featured artists on Kanye West's chart-topping Donda album, and was a surprise guest at West's elaborate pre-release listening sessions. Burke is also skeptical that any significant change will happen immediately, but she's not without hope for the future. History and present has left me with low expectations from the music industry. I would hope that this verdict would raise the bar in the industry so that so-called bad behavior isn't rewarded or ignored, but grounds for distancing from artists who don't represent the standard that the industry stands by, she tells Billboard. I don't think it will happen, not right away. But I am hopeful that small incremental changes like not playing music by convicted rapists will get us closer. We the survivors are also the customers. We have been treated like our voices don't matter for so long, maybe the outcome of this trial will change that. What's clear is that although R. Kelly's first of 3 trials is over, the music industry, which enabled the star over decades to build a network around his sex crimes so intricate that he was convicted of racketeering charges, still faces judgment. And with Kelly's conviction, feigned ignorance will be a much less convincing defense. Soul, classic soul, Motown. Posted in Hot Right Now. Next post. Silk Sonic announces release date for debut album. Previous post. Exclusive interview, legendary band, Kool and the Gang Perfect Union. Author. Related posts. Travis Barker teases SNL appearance with Young Thug. October 16, 2021, comment closed. 4 effective ways to deal with rudeness. October 16, 2021, comment closed. Adele's Easy on Me off to fast start, aiming for splashy chart debut. October 16, 2021, comment closed. Recent posts. Travis Barker teases SNL appearance with Young Thug. 4 effective ways to deal with rudeness. Adele's Easy on Me off to fast start, aiming for splashy chart debut. Rini releases atmospheric debut project Constellations. Pink Sweat Dollar unveils new song I Feel Good. Copyright I Love Classic Soul 2021. Powered by WordPress and Fancy Themes.